Welcome to the Yappy Hour, powered by Yappily, the podcast where we dive into all things dog with heart, honesty, and a whole lot of curiosity. I'm your host, Nathan Dunleavy, and today we're joined by someone whose work blends compassion, ethics, and emotional intelligence in a truly powerful way. Maya Badham is the founder and CEO of SAH-SDA, a qualified advisor in sexual and domestic abuse, and the creator of the Partnership Planet model, a framework for how we live with our dogs in genuine partnership. Today's conversation isn't about training methods or obedience, it's about connection. It's about what real partnership looks like between dogs and humans. And honestly, it's an outlook I think we all need to hear. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's get started. Welcome back to the Yappy Hour, powered by Yappily. I'm your host, Nathan Dunleavy, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode of the Yappy Hour today. Even more excited that we've got the amazing Maya Badham joining us. Welcome, Maya, to the Yappy Hour. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. We're just saying it's a bit warm and polleny today, but other than that, I'm absolutely fine. Thank you. How are you?
It is I'm okay. It is very warm. I'm often a sweaty Betty myself, so
We're in it together.
don't worry. We're in it together. That's it. So, Maya, your background, going into our first section, all about meeting Maya, your background is incredibly unique. Could you tell us a bit more about your journey and what led you to create the Partnership Planet model,
Yeah,
please?
so I think it is unique's probably a good word actually, because my background,
I love
yeah,
that
unique
word.
or a bit off the wall. I didn't necessarily start out in the animal world. I've kind of made my way to it. And I think, well, I mean, everyone's journey is unique in some respects, isn't it? But I definitely didn't have a traditional route into animal and the dog specific world. So my background's in human kind of support and emotional support for those who've experienced trauma, normally within a domestic abuse lens. And I worked with young
Mm,
adults quite a lot. So I worked with kind of anyone over 13 plus, worked with some older people as well, and some vulnerable people who have additional needs as well.
mm,
And
mm.
then I got my dog in 2019. So I've been working in that sector for over 10 years. I think I entered in 20, would have been around 2013. I started volunteering alongside my degrees. And then I went into qualifying as an independent support worker before then moving into education and training. So delivering training on kind of trauma-informed practice, delivering some of the big national trainings to statutory organisations like policing and social services. And then I moved to
Oh,
rural
okay.
areas in 2019 and I got my dog. So we're going to talk about my dog
Oh,
now. Podrick. I got him 8 weeks old and he's my first dog as an adult. So we had dogs growing up. We fostered Dalmatians when I was younger, because my parents did and my family did. And I've always loved animals. I actually wanted to be a vet,
mm.
but I reached GCC and I was
Oh,
definitely not good
wow.
at maths. So, so,
Same.
but it's really weird how life shunts you sometimes into something that you think doesn't relate, and then you kind of come back to it in a different way.
Yes,
Because doing what I do now, I really feel like this is what I was meant to do, and I think it's quite rare sometimes that you have that, you meet that kind of purpose in life that you're meant to do, and so I
definitely.
got Podrick in
Definitely.
2019, so he's just turned
Podrick, I love it.
the border collie. He's
What
a border,
breed is Pod? Oh,
he's a
Border
border collie.
Collie,
He's
yes.
split face border collie, and I got that's a story for another time. Like how I got him was a bit unusual as well. But what I realised when I got him, as someone who is neurodivergent and is very kind of a stressy person. So I was watching him, this
Mm-hmm.
joyful puppy, just loving life, and I was just thinking to myself, why is he doing that? What is he thinking? How can
Mm.
I give him the best life? Stressing that I wasn't giving him the best, kind of maybe being a bit of a
Oh,
helicopter parent, to be
I
honest.
know. Yeah, I've been a bit like that in the past.
It's and it is actually quite stressful, having a puppy. I think it is something that we underestimate if it is our first
We do.
time as well having one. He just was amazing and so interesting, and so much of the work that I'd already done with young adults and those who experienced trauma, even though when I got him, he was fresh. So he hadn't, nothing had happened to him or yet. I was using a lot of those same skills and mindset of accepting him for who he was, listening to him, respecting his kind of boundaries. And I realized quite quickly that that was actually quite unusual. Because I then entered the dog world, at first the Facebook kind of groups and then through kind of
Oh
puppy
God.
classes, and you'll just receive such a load of information, different places, different people,
Yeah.
different countries. The algorithm, you're looking at one thing and then it kind of pushes you into another thing. It's saying something completely opposite. And it was really stressful. I raised Podrick on my own as a single parent, as I like to say.
Oh
Also
wow, I love
navigating it on my own at the beginning, which
yeah.
is, yeah,
Full
it's
on.
so full on. And I was really lucky that when I got him. I was in a break. I just finished a job. I'd moved, and I had about 4 weeks until I started the next job. So I actually had a period of time
Oh,
when I
okay.
literally just had to
That's
dedicate to
good.
him. So I spent that time deep
Mm.
diving, reading everything I could, sifting all of that information that I was, being bombarded with through that internal moral lens, my values, who I am as a person, how I view
Mm.
the world and the
Mm.
bit of sentient beings that we live with. And so it was quite easy in some respects to pick out the bits that I would more align with and reject the bits that I didn't align with so much. And then through that kind of exploration is when I, started to engage with some of the more well-known behaviourists. I'm very lucky that I look at my local down the road behaviourist, Trisha Hollingshead. She offered like,
Oh yeah, I know the
yeah, she
name.
offered a free kind of consultation-y thing for young puppies, and I took Podrick, and now we're friends because we live pretty much next door to each other. And yeah, her book's great. Listen to
L-
Me, Exploring the Emotional Life of Your Dog. It's a shameless plug. Not She's not told me to do that, but it's a fabulous.
Oh, I don't. I love a plug on here. You plug away.
It's a fabulous book, and it wasn't published when I first got Podrick, but it's really solidified my understanding of kind of body language behavior and that emotional. The key in the title of that is the emotional life of the animal and the dog. Um, so
Yeah.
and that's really where the partnership planet, the compliance and the partnership planet was born, because they're two sides of you know, a paradigm shift model is that we currently, lots of people live on this compliance planet. So that is rooted in obedience, rooted in control, rooted in what I want you to do as the dog, rather than asking, is that something that benefits them? Is that something that they want to do? And I modeled it
Mm.
on that work that
Mm.
I had done working with domestic abuse survivors and understanding perpetrator mentality. And so I adapted it because the planets aren't for those who intentionally harm or intentionally want control. It's for people that have been told through that societal myths, societal pressure and stereotypes what it means to live with a dog, what it means to love a dog. And
Mm.
unfortunately, that, for want of a better word, dominant paradigm is the one that most people um, currently sit under, and it's the one that you're vulnerable to when you are entering that world for the first
Yeah.
time. And so I originally wrote the
Yeah.
planets for myself because I was by this time engaging with a serious amount of information. I was reading proper behavior books, not just, the kind of training books. And then I went and I did courses and qualifications to learn more about the kind of canine psychology and behavior. And the more I did that, the more I realized how similar it is to the children's stuff that I was doing. So a lot of it was basically just the child stuff rewritten and repackaged for dogs. So that was really interesting. So it was the model was a way of sifting for me and then putting it. I'm a visual learner, so putting that all of it into one place. If you look at the planet model, you'll see the amount of references on it is quite massive. And then that's
Mm.
because I've taken I mean, they're not, nothing in the planets are new. It's just a new visual aid. All of it is rooted in other people's, what other people have brought to the table. And I think one of the unique things is
Yeah.
it is interdisciplinary, and we need to have that interdisciplinary and intersectional lens if we're going to have progress. So that's the beauty of not just looking at something in a silo, but looking at a range of voices from across the country, across the world, across sectors and professions, and trying then to say, hey, this might be a little bit a piece of the puzzle that might help someone else who just
Yeah.
opens Google and just gets contradictory information.
Yeah. This raft of
Yeah,
info just, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you. So, what was the moment you realised this framework was needed, Maya?
Do you know if it was a specific moment or just that journey that I've just talked
No.
about a little bit? Is that
Yeah.
trying to make sense of how a roadmap for. So I knew my aim was to make sure that my dog had the best life he could possibly have. I didn't really know what that meant.
I like what you said.
So
I like what you said by roadmap as well. That's a good
yeah,
analogy. Roadmap. I like
yeah,
that.
so I didn't know what
Mm.
that meant. So I knew in my heart that's what I wanted to give. But so many
Mm.
people think that they're giving that, and actually what they are doing is the compliance planet. So that's the kind
Yes.
of conflict that I had when I was trying to figure everything out, and I think that a lot of other people have, is that their internal drive is good. It's rooted in care and love and compassion, but that the methodology, and I don't just mean by kind of training or tools by that, but I just mean the method that in which we interact with dogs and life is sadly rooted in just a history of um
Mm.
maybe not a good understanding of the emotional life, or maybe not even that, an acknowledgement, first of all, that they are emotional
Yeah.
beings and that they have a right to that choice and agency and respect from us. Because so often what we see is actually a
Yeah.
thinly veiled, or sometimes not thinly veiled, want for respect. And that's why it is so similar to some
Yes.
of the work that I was doing in the domestic abuse world, because perpetrators in that world
Yeah, I
want
bet.
unbridled, unadulterated respect from the people and often animals that they interact with. Um,
Mm.
and unfortunately, I love all of the kind of, Kim Brophy's leg stuff, because she talks about the dog as a captive
Yes.
being. And I think we need to start reframing that in our minds when we are thinking about how we live and love dogs, is thinking this animal, we've come so far in even 100-year history of developmental and evolution in
Mm.
terms of ourselves, and how we live is so different, yet our
Yes.
animals haven't had that kind of enough time, really. So I think, and again, I'm just, this isn't new what I'm saying, but kind of that labeling of behavioral issues. So on the compliance planet, you see this kind of good bad continuum that Andy Hale talks about quite a lot. Is that we don't have any grace for our animals. They're either good or bad, and there's no room
Mm.
for the range of emotional life that we have even on a daily basis. As human beings, we seem to know that we have, sometimes we wake up, maybe, we slept in the wrong way, so our neck's a little bit in pain, so a little bit grumpy. We go downstairs, we have our coffee, it perks us up a little bit, we might take some ibuprofen, and then for those of you who exercise, because I'm not one of those people, but some people might go for a run or something, and then that also
I'm
makes them, that spikes their mood.
I'm not that person
But just
either.
as an example, it spikes them up a bit more, and then they might have a really productive morning, and then in the afternoon maybe they get some bad news and their mood comes down. And we seem to recognise that in ourselves, but we don't allow
Mm.
our animals and dogs especially to have that range of emotions. We want them to just be fit that box all of the time, and it does a disservice. It
I
does a
know.
disservice to them and to us and our relationship, and they tolerate it because they're amazing.
They
So
are. Yeah, we don't want to fit them all into a box because everyone's different and unique, and that's what makes us all special, and particularly them. I just want to put a little side note here that my dogs are barking in the background, so it wouldn't be the yappy hour without having some yappy dogs. Sometimes they're with my husband downstairs if I'm recording, so we may or may not edit them
I
out. It depends, but
think even.
but today they are. Yeah, today they are with me, and they are like some. I do sometimes leave them downstairs if my husband's not home, but then they kind of would bark if they were left
Oh.
downstairs. But now they've probably heard something and they're
It's a
barking
great
in the
example of
background.
the
So yes,
partnership
this
planet in a way, with the barking, because barking is such a classic one that
okay.
people contact behavioural and trainers for, it goes back to that labelling
Yes,
of barking as an annoyance for humans. So we find it
well, it's
exactly,
communication to them,
it's
isn't it?
communication, it's their voice, in terms of
Yeah,
the sounds that they make. Obviously, they talk through a range of different, body movements and things, but barking is a natural thing. And then when you look at breed, obviously that can also fluctuate depending on breed. And I think that's why with the partnership planet, and it's not the partnership planet isn't about saying, okay, let your dog continuously bark for hours, because you have to balance your human right to pee with their right to have a voice and bark. So it's looking for those reasons, isn't it? So is there an unmet need? Are they barking for a purpose? So if someone goes past the window, or the postman or the postman,
it's normally what it is for
it,
these lot. Someone's gone past the front
and
door.
so for my own dog, he's not very barky at all, but he will bark, especially if he's deeply asleep and say the post comes, he will startle bark basically, which makes complete sense. And
Yeah,
some people would then respond with, sharply tell them to shut up, or, in some way. But really for Podrick, I just let him, and he once he feels fulfilled, normally less than a minute, he will just be like, okay, nothing's happening, nothing to worry about. I won't bark anymore. And I know like that's not the case for every single dog, but
well, they were bred for a reason to bark to alert you to oncoming dangers, so they're just letting you know,
yeah. And so
aren't they?
I just say thank you. And that's why I like some of Kim's Brophy's stuff. Her hacks, because sometimes it's just like when he communicates
Yes.
back. So I always thank him, and I thank him you know in a really neutral voice, or because you don't want him to add arousal. So I'm not like thank you, but oh, thank you
No,
very much, and then I'll explain, oh, they've gone now, did it, or you say let's do something else
I love all
instead,
that.
and it's that comes quite naturally to me, but I think it's about acknowledging that it doesn't come naturally to other people, and that's where, I mean, this could be a podcast,
Mm,
and that it's so interesting is the human, how we're raised as human beings, how what we believe in our values and the lessons that we learn ourselves influences how much
mm,
of our we interact with our animals. And I think until we improve that, our own emotional regulation, our own understanding of parenting, so until we get a better relationship with children, not only in an individual household sense, but as a society-wide country sense, I think we're only ever going to
mm,
be able to go so far with our animals, especially our dogs, because we still have such
mm,
a what's the word, like that power, that adultification type way of interacting with even children. So until that improves, I
mm.
think is an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And another little plug for Kim Brophy and her book, Meet Your
Mm.
Dog. It's an amazing book for people if you haven't read it yet. I was glued to it for ages.
I think I listened to that one on
Brilliant. So,
So
what's
I
that?
think I
Sorry?
listened to that one on Audible, or one of the Audible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember taking it away with me on holiday and I read it and I couldn't pull it down. Brilliant. So moving on to our next section. So we may have touched on this a little bit
Mm.
already, but it's all about understanding the partnership planet model. So what is it in just a brief nutshell,
Yeah,
Maya?
yeah. So I think earlier on when I said roadmap, and you said you like that word, I think that's
Yes,
ultimately
love
what
that.
it is. It's not the whole picture. So that's why the references are there, and I like, please, use it to go and seek further information. And I think that's part of it, is you need to invest in that education to fully be able to put the partnership planet into action, into like meaningful action. But essentially, it's a framework that it's almost like the perfect idea of what a relationship would be. And I think, in a way, so obviously, and I will say the partnership, the planet model, it is edited fairly regularly because the amount that we're learning about the world, animals, world,
Mm.
intelligence,
Forever
is always
evolving.
evolving. And I'm not ever one to
Mm.
say we strive for perfection, but we never. I don't think we ever get there. So with the planet model, it's more about showing there is a different way. We're not always going to do it
Mm.
exactly right, but it's about
Mm.
that roadmap, that guidance to how can we get better. It's an improvement
Mm.
model, really. And what it does is it categorizes that core
Yeah.
paradigm shift that we are seeing in certain areas.
Mm.
But what we want is a societal shift, that paradigm shift from looking beyond training, looking beyond compliance and obedience to a relationship that's rooted in compassion and connection and consent, all the C's, um, and
All the seas, love
and
that.
an understanding of what it means to be a dog, truly be a dog, and love a dog, and fulfill that dog's needs in the environment that we currently have set up. That's kind of what it is.
Mm. Yeah, a couple of things there is that obviously they're saying like, oh, nobody's perfect. Well, being perfect's boring, and a slight sort of comparison, although quite different. With my mentees, I say progress is better than
Yeah.
perfection. I'd rather they just make progress to their sort of end goals rather than trying to be perfect all the time. You know, there's no point. Just take the pressure
Mm.
and just as long as you're making some
And
progress.
it's like there's
So what?
repair as well. So, and this is all taken from the child development stuff. So, like, if you're not perfect and you do something that you feel is wrong, you didn't feel like that you handled that situation with your dog as well as you could. Dogs are arguably the most
Mm.
forgiving species that we have. So the good news is that you can repair that. It's called a rupture. So when that attachment or that bond has a rupture, the partnership planet is not
Okay.
just about saying you must do it this way all of the time. It's like if there is a blip, it is a way of mending that blip and a way of also use it with yourself. So if we're saying you need to do this with your dog, be accepting, understand them, love them for who they are, take the pressure off and all of that, you need to do it with ourselves. So it's okay not to have slip ups sometimes. Like you said, we're all human, but finding our way
Mm.
back to that is don't let that kind of shunt you off into then that back into compliance planet. And I think that's one of the hardest things about,
Mm.
I said about education and that investment. To look at the compliance and partnership planet, it you need to have critical self-reflection skills. You need to be comfortable being uncomfortable and saying, because lots of people have read the planet and it's deeply confronting sometimes, because one of the things I've noticed is
Mm.
lots of people think they're on partnership planet, they're actually on compliance planet, and that disconnection is quite, like I said, quite confronting for people, is to realize actually I think I'm doing it this, but I'm not. So for a classic example of that is
Mm.
around, I'm going to say it, although this is where I get a bit anxious because people sometimes think, is around like the training that we do. So with even when you use positive training and you use treats, it can still be
Mm.
rooted in a compliance
Mm.
mindset. So if say the dog,
I no, I completely.
yeah, yeah. So if the dog doesn't want to do something and you lure them to do it, that's compliance. That they're not doing it out of a choice, or sometimes they will do it out of
I
a
can
choice that
completely
leaves
understand.
you, rather than looking internally, is this something that they want to do? So you sometimes see that quite a lot with the sports arena type things. And so really, when you read things like that and you think, oh God, that's what I've been doing, it's natural as human beings to go, actually, no, I'm not a bad person. But the whole point of it is
Mm.
to subvert those labels, the good bad the good bad continuum, where you're only good or you're only bad. It doesn't serve us as humans, it doesn't serve our dogs, and so that's kind of the a little bit of the tricky thing with the planets, is you need to go into them with a mindset that it may not match what you think you are doing, kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah. Go in with an open
Yeah,
mind.
exactly.
Why did you choose the planetary metaphor, and what does it help people feel or see differently?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wanted something round because originally it was a wheel because the power and control wheels which they referenced on the planet model, they were kind of the spark of inspiration. So they're not a copy in any way, shape, or form, but they're referenced as a kind of inspiration because, like I said, the wheel
Mm.
model is in domestic abuse. That's all about intentional harm and cruelty towards other people in that sense. And so it made sense to kind of have the elements kind of in that circle with the reason, the motivating factor in the middle. So that's why it was originally wheel. And then I moved to planet, and I think planet probably does fit better because from a visual and a kind of a cognitive, where do I fit? I think having planets is easier. And then I described the middle bit as a black hole. So like I just said, then some people that are on compliance planet and they're on that planet almost firmly on it, they might jump to partnership planet for bits but go back to compliance. Not many people are wholly on a
Mm.
partnership planet because like we're still learning all the time around it. So, but lots of people spend most of their time on a partnership planet and then they might fall into compliance planet. Those people that are kind of trying to do a mashup of both, just because that's who they are and how they act, they kind of fall in the middle, that black hole, that middle part where they're not really on compliant, wholly on compliance or wholly on partnership. Um, but really the planets that, in terms of the shape of them, came from that idea of it's like I think maybe just my visual ease kind of point that I'm either here or I'm either there. I
Mm.
think that was this probably kind of where
Yeah.
it mainly came from. I think
Yeah. Brilliant. Who is the model for, Maya? Dog professionals, guardians, or
it's a really
both?
good question. I mean, when I wrote them, I was, like I said to you, I'm not a qualified behaviourist. I'm not a trainer. It's not my area of expertise at all. And so I wrote them
Mm-hmm.
originally for myself as a parent, a dog parent, to
Mm.
make sense of the world. I think therefore they are quite useful for parents, but I think anyone can look at them and use them. I think for professionals, it's still really useful to look at them because that is sometimes. So I have had some professionals use them in sessions with clients. So therefore, it's a
Okay.
resource that
That's
they can
interesting.
use the kind of that the client can take away. They can have a read of it and an understanding of it, and it can help support what you're teaching, especially if you are kind of in that positive
Mm.
space, into the positive training space or behaviour space. They can help them to understand what you're saying in a way.
Mm.
But also, some professionals are on compliance plans. So it's also useful for them to kind of critically examine internally, where do I sit, and am I practicing what I preach, and that kind of thing as well. So I say that
Yes.
for anyone really.
Yeah. No, I love that. Absolutely love that. Brilliant. Thank you so much. We're going to be moving on to our next section, which is all about a new way of coexisting with our dogs. One of the things that stood out to me in the model is the emphasis on co regulation and autonomy. Why are those so important in human dog relationships?
Think it's not even just about human dog relationships. I think it's just relationships full stop. Because
In general?
um,
Mm.
if we don't have that mutual understanding, respect, tolerance for other beings generally, you're not going to have a solid foundation for a positive relationship, regardless of who they are. And I think, I touched on earlier about like co-regulation, unless we are regulated ourselves. It's kind of a lot of it is taken from that gentle parenting with children and then the kind of child
Mm.
development profession. And kind of what I used to do when I worked with young adults is um how can you expect someone to trust you and be fully invested in you if you're not able to be fully present and whole with them? So really it's
Mm.
and I mean that's what a lot of the behaviourists do, isn't it? They're not just working with the dog, they're working with that whole family. And that's what my
Yes.
organisation,
Yeah.
when I'm working in animals and the abuse side of things, is what I want is for animals to be included within a whole family, what we call a whole family and a whole systems approach to ending kind of violence and abuse towards everyone. And I think the planets kind of speak to that in the same way, is that holistic, whole person, whole animal, person-centered, dog-centered approach. Um, you can't ask for something you're not willing to give. It's not a relationship rooted in equality, or any form of equity if you transactionally based kind of relationship. So that's why it's important.
Love that. Could you give an example of what a partnership based response might look like versus a more conventional one?
Yeah. So we touched on, that barking example is quite a good example. One I often also use is, and it all comes down to having that understanding of dogs as a species, and then dogs, your individual dog, which is why I love the legs model so much, because Kimbro's legs talks about the learning, environment, genetics, and self of the dog, which makes
I'm glad you explained what they all were
yeah,
because I thought we better do
that
that. All right, Kim's
yeah,
legs.
exactly. Yeah. And that's like who that your dog is as an individual, because there will be breed traits, there will be history and all of this, but that self, that S is so important, because that is your dog's personality. So I'm thinking about my own dog, so Podrick, he's one of 9 puppies, and I was very lucky in that we've seen some of the other puppies, grow up, and how and they all had the same environment. So they had the same mum and dad. There will be slight differences in um, how they were raised, because no one is, even siblings. So even if you're a twin, there's slightly different ways. Your experiences are still different. So that's your E and the environment. But they had, fairly similar early life experiences, and yet Podrick is uniquely him. And and what I find wild, I don't know why I find it wild, because it's the same with human families, but like all his siblings, you can like see their mum and dad in them really clearly, so they have really clear facial structure, facial bits that look exactly, really strong facial resemblance to their family, and yet he as himself is so uniquely him, and it's just so interesting and important for that dog. So in terms of going back to the what a partnership based response may look like. So the one I use the most is around, say you get like a dachshund or a terrier breed that's like bred historically to dig, and you put that dog in a house with like a general pet home. They don't have any intention of doing any kind of original sports or whatever the animal is bred for. And then that dog digs up the rose bushes, or that dog, goes on an adventure and tunneling under the fence or something like that. And then we get really annoyed with that, and we say, oh, so it's a bad dog. It's a bad dog because he's doing these things that really annoy us. And my prized rose bushes are now mulch. And so a really simple solution to that from a partnership point of view is the dog is clearly displaying has a need to dig, which is rooted in probably genetics, so that G, the environment in that at the moment that's the only place that he can dig, and then also their self. So another good example of that is Podrick. So Podrick's a border collie. He is the most unborder collie most people have ever met. So he's very
Really?
lazy, he doesn't need loads of exercise. He's a complete couch potato. He's very gentle. He doesn't chase. He doesn't. He's very not herdy at all. And
God, he's so
really,
uncharacteristic
really
for the
uncharacteristic.
border.
And that's him. That's him. That's who he is.
Yes, his
So if I
personality.
quickly finish off the story with the dash, and I'll go back to Podrick and his endpoint. So then, for example, it would just be a case of giving them a place that they are allowed to dig, or a sand pit or an outlet in some
Yeah,
other way that they're allowed, that they
yeah,
can fulfill that
yeah,
need, and therefore that behaviour issue no longer it needs to exist. So, but with
yeah.
Podrick, I just tell you this. So when I got him, I thought there's a person down the road who does kind of sheep trials and there's trying. I thought, oh, that seems like a really fun thing to do with a collie web. And she just said to me like, oh, I'm not worried that he's like wants to attack the sheep. He's just not naturally very good. You know, he just didn't have the natural ability. And I know you have the
Oh,
teaching element to it, but I could have forced him. So I could have said, well, I want the dog. There's a trialing dog. So I'm going to
yeah.
keep doing this and I'm going to train him to the inch of his life to do it and do it well. And he probably would because he likes to make me happy, like a lot of the dogs, you know. And they're, you know,
They
historically,
do.
that's why they're so successful as a companion animal. So I could have made him, but would that have benefited him? Would that have made our relationship better? Or would that have compromised his view of me and his trust of me? You know, that's a question that we need to be asking that historically we haven't really been asking. So
Yeah. As if it's more benefiting you than the dog,
that's
isn't
what
it?
I
And
think.
we want to be doing things for
It's
them,
an
don't we?
ego
Rather than for
thing.
our
It's a
egos.
complete ego thing.
Yeah.
Dogs do not care about winning and ribbons. And I'm not saying that they don't like us just to category
No, the fuss.
take that off in case I get the sports people coming at us. But you know, there are dogs out there. You watch them do sports, and they'd really rather not be. You can tell by they're doing it purely
Yeah.
because they've been asked to by someone that they love, and I just can't think of a worse mis you know, betrayal of trust sometimes than the ignoring of them and their autonomy, like their agency, their wishes. We would if we should as a
Mm,
society be questioning that when we do it with humans. I don't think we're quite even there yet with some of that. So I can understand why dogs are behind. But that is that is what the planets are about. Is like having curiosity, fostering curiosity, questioning our motivation. That all of that, and it's hard work.
mm,
It's really really hard work,
mm.
and so some people will just give up
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. So you describe it as moving from ownership in inverted commas to stewardship in inverted commas. What does that mind shift mean in everyday life, Maya?
Yes, I think I'll briefly summarize it because I think all those examples I just gave are really good examples of exactly that. It's about that
Definitely.
choice, agency, autonomy. It's about guiding the dog and having a conversation with the animal. You know, not a kind of in English necessarily or in human word.
I wish.
And I think it's like um they rely on us for so much. So it's not about saying, oh, let's just give them complete free reign. So because sometimes it's misconstrued as well, you just have no boundaries, then you just let them do whatever they want. Well, it's the same with
No.
children.
Yeah.
We don't, there's a safety element there, there's a responsibility element there, there's definitely a legal element to curb any of that. But I think as far as possible, it's about those questioning, so active listening, respecting when they say no, they don't want to, and if they have to do it because it's a medical or it's making sure that we do it in a way that, as far as possible, respects their holistic being and their fear and who they
Mm,
are. That's essentially what it is.
mm. Yeah, and from speaking to various people that I have done on this podcast, but I am starting to see like the shift more, and I'm hearing like the words choice,
Mm.
consent, and the dog. What was the other one? Choice, consent,
Yeah,
agency. We're starting to see more of shift, aren't we, to that way? Thankfully,
I think. Well, I hope so. I hope so.
my
I
mind.
deeply, deeply hope so. But I think those of us who are already kind of doing it and asking those questions, we sit in a little bubble, and when you put your head out of that bubble, it's still not great.
Oh, no, I know.
Which is such a shame. Yeah, and I just hope the planets help that conversation. I mean,
Oh, most definitely. Thank you so much for that. So, moving on to our next section, which is all the personal side, dogs as partners and not projects. Have there been any dogs in your life, Maya, who have helped shape or challenge this model for you personally at all?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, Podrick is. is my life now, in terms of having that dog-centric life is definitely for me.
Oh.
And he was a big inspiration for the planets, really, because I mean he just taught me so much. I mean that's a whole podcast in and of itself, is what didn't I learn from Podrick? Is the better question, isn't it? Is it just changed my life? I wouldn't be doing, like, my organization wouldn't exist, my, like, being asked to do this wouldn't happen. He just, yeah, he's just the center of everything. I do have a cat and I do love him, because she's actually sat, where is she? She's up there somewhere. And always talk about Podrick. I feel
You
like,
did
oh
mention
gosh, my
about
poor cat thinks no one thinks I love my cat. I do love my cat a lot. And
what's your cat
she's called
called?
Strudel.
Strude, I love it. And do they get on
Yeah,
okay?
they do. They're not best friends, but they are happily coexisting in a
Coexisting.
non-fearful environment, and that is all that I wanted, really, for them, because she's a new-ish addition. She joined in September last year after.
Oh, so she came after, because normally people have cats and then
Well, I
get
did. So I
dogs,
had
from
two
what I've
cats when I
seen.
got Podrick,
Oh.
and so he had grown up with cats, and then sadly, over time, both my cats passed away, and then I got Strudel was a rescue, and I mean Strudel's taught me so much as well. As that she in fact, I put a post up today. So the difference between getting Podrick as a puppy, our kind of bond was almost instantaneous, because he was really young, and
Mm,
also
mm.
dogs are naturally, well, Pod was anyway, like very naturally, what's the word? Not, he just was so, dogs were bred to be around us, so they're very us focused. Whereas
Yeah,
cats are like,
they are,
be
but
kind of more,
more aloof.
yeah, aloof. I mean, none of my cats have been aloof, have been limpets, but dogs naturally gravitate in that kind of way. So getting Strudel, and even my cats that I had before, I had them as kittens. So again, that bond was kind of formed fairly easily. With Strudel as a rescue, what I know, I even put a post about this today. What I noticed with her is it's taken 10 months to, for that
Really?
trust. Yeah, because this is the assumption that we have, is like, oh, we bring an animal into our lives, they should owe us something, or they should love us immediately, or they should trust us immediately, even as
Mm,
puppies, or
nah.
young animals. And so she's really taught me that it's about earning on both sides. Obviously, I liked her a lot. That's why I rescued. That's why I connected with. We had a connection because obviously, well, I chose her, but she didn't run away when I tried to. Joke. But I brought her home, and I made a hiding place, and she hid there for at least about 24 hours, and it's really taken her as someone. She obviously had existing trauma, because she'd been torn away from her home. She'd been at the rescue for 4 months. She'd now been taken to a
Oh.
new place with new smells and a weird person who I didn't know yet. And so now she's very cuddly. She comes downstairs now, and it was a process. Not
Mm.
forced her. Like, lots of people get an animal and they just kind of plonk it down in the middle of the house. They have access to the whole of the house immediately. All the other animals come and they're like, oh, who's this new person, dog, animal, whatever. And some animals cope quite well with that, but the majority struggle with that, because, and I know I would, if like some strangers ran at me suddenly, and it would be scary, right? So she's taught me loads in terms of love and trust and mutual understanding and everything. But Podrick really, really something sparked in me, I guess. I think the more I learn about kind of that applied ethology, I really believe that some people have a genetic switch around dogs that like turns on, and we just have an additional thing. There's just layers to it, isn't it? Because the way that we live with
Yeah,
our animals is so different to kind of the average. In terms of like, if I'm going, everything's planned around portrait. But it's probably
yeah,
taught me, I think, something around challenging expectations, and sometimes our expectations have to change, and that's okay. So when I first got
yes,
him,
yeah,
um, and I didn't get him for a reason. It was a companion thing. It wasn't anything other than that. When I got him, I'd just come out of frontline support work with survivors. I was very unwell mentally from that, and I kind of
Gosh,
thought, oh, he would be good to meet. He gets me out of the house. He gets me,
good for
thinking
your
about
mental
like,
health.
oh, going to the cafe or whatever. But he turned one during the first lockdown, so a
Oh
lot of
wow,
the his kind of adolescence was in a period where we couldn't go to a cafe, we couldn't go to a pub garden, we couldn't go to these places. And he'd also had some negative interactions with other dogs, so he then became quite fearful of other dogs, which presented in kind of a reactive response. So he had his dog friends, he can make
mm,
new dog friends, but he needs it to be slow and he needs to be able to process, which I think is very reasonable, to be honest with you. And
definitely.
unfortunately, he'd been ran at speed by the friendly park dog. But he
Oh
just really
god,
couldn't cope with it. He's quite sensitive and it's scary. Like, I just think people don't if you think if I was walking around and then some two people ran at me that I didn't know and then were
I know.
space touching me, kind of going behind me,
I'd pee in my pants.
would be really, really scary. And that can be traumatic and that can have a lifelong lasting impact, um, as it did on Podrick.
Yeah.
So I had to then critically examine my expectations and go, he's never ever going to be a pub garden dog. He would be a great pub garden dog if
Mm.
there weren't other dogs. So he's absolutely, sound in all other areas, but and I think that's probably the biggest
Mhm.
lesson that I had, and the biggest lesson from the planet is that question: Are we doing it because we want them to do it, or are we doing it because it serves them in some way? Do they actually want to do it? Because now I go to cafes and I go to the pub, wherever, with my friends without pod, and I see dogs there, like I said, that don't want to be there, that are there,
Yeah, I know what
and
you
people are
mean.
just so blind to it.
Yeah,
They want that, so they
they are.
make that. It's disturbing in some regards just how little regard we give to the sentient emotional life of another being.
And like, and I'm not defending those people in any way, but because they're not in the industry that we are, they may not necessarily
Mm.
know because they don't know what we don't
That's why the
know.
model, it says unintentional, because it's not intentional. Like, there's no question that the
Mm,
people on Compliance Planet love their dogs. It's not a question about love. It's just a question about
no.
blindness and ignorance that isn't intentionally.
Yeah,
That's just how we're brought up. The societal messaging we get around dogs and living with dogs. That's
yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
Just need to reframe it and look at it different. I think we might have answered the next question in terms of
Yes,
what
exactly.
something a
Yeah.
dog taught you when you least
I
expected
think
it. But
so.
yeah, with that we sort of did that in a roundabout way with what we were saying previously. And I wanted to just add in here as well is that I think sometimes dogs come into our life for a reason and they may find us
Mm,
when we're not necessarily looking or they come to help us. But like it's funny because a lot of people I speak to, like I was a bit of a late bloomer with dogs, I'm not gonna lie. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, like dogs had them since I was a baby and I grew up with them and just and all this lot. And we didn't have like dogs as a family. Like my nan always had dogs, so I was around them, but we didn't have them with my parents. And it wasn't until I hit 30, so just over 10 years ago now, that I got my first dog as an adult because I was living with my husband at the time, and we just got a house together, and it was the ideal time. As soon as we got this house, within 2 weeks, I knew I wanted to get a dog because I'd lived in a flat and I'd gone traveling or whatever, and I got this dog, and then like this obsession grew because 10 years later, we've now got bloody seven. So I couldn't imagine my life without him. And also, I think you said something about you plan your lifestyle. Like we've got an SA dog as well, and like we do plan our life around him because of his SA. It's just the way it is, I'm afraid. So that, and that's okay.
Exactly.
That's okay. Yeah. So moving on to our next section, and dealing with behaviour challenges through a partnership lens. So we're just going to sort of touch on this briefly and stuff. So lots of people listening will have dogs that pull on the lead. We've mentioned barking at the
Mm,
door, the postman, or can't settle alone. How would the partnership planet lens help someone navigate those kind of struggles, Maya?
yeah. So I think we have touched on it a little bit. It's first of all, it's a questioning of, is this a behavioural issue, or is this an unmet need? Is this a seeking of connection?
Mm,
Is this something else? Because you can't train safety, you have to kind of be safe. That it has to be a whole environment and a connection for there to be that behavioural change. And so I'm not saying that we get rid of training, because I think training has a place, but I think it's and that we are missing quite a lot of the time. So what is that whole environment for that
mm,
whole dog and that whole family? So
mm,
like there are so many factors that go into that, isn't it? And the partnership planet just encourages people to take that pressure off, take that labeling off, and instead look a little bit under the surface. So I think that's how it can kind of help, and it's designed to be used. I think I mentioned earlier, but when we talked about who are the planets for, you can use the planets alongside a really great behavior plan, or your behaviorists that you're working with, or your trainer that you're working with, if they're aligned to it. If they're not, they probably won't like it. um, but it's good additional metaphorical values type evaluation than an actual teaching of how to stop it. So much we ask how to stop, rather than what can we do action wise, and also prevention, like early
yeah.
intervention and prevention. It's obviously in the abuse world, that's where we focus on, because I don't want to be supporting a survivor. I don't want there to be survivors to support. So
Yeah.
prevention and early intervention, that the planets help with that quite a lot, because
Yeah.
um, that guidance, I suppose.
Don't they say the saying that goes, prevention's better than the
Yeah,
cure? Is that what they
yeah,
say? People say.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm obviously a qualified dog trainer, but I'm not actively practicing as a dog trainer day to day at the moment. But I think we're even coming away from the word training as well, because it's quite militant and regimental, really. And I think we are starting to see a shift away from that word, which I like.
yeah. That's why we talk also about that stewardship, that guidance. That it's not about like not giving them anything, because
Educating or educator.
ultimately, that, like we said, that balance has to be there. Like you have to be able to live your life alongside your dog. So your dog shouldn't. There shouldn't be a hierarchy of the dog is now over you and you are over them. There should just be, and there's never going to be true equality, because there's a power dynamic, because we have so much control
Hmm,
over everything. When our dog eats, where they eat, how much they eat, what they, the brand of the food that they eat.
this
All
is
of this
true.
stuff. So with that, and it's not about saying, oh, that's bad. It's about saying, where can we give some sort of agency and choice in this kind of, at the minute, this choiceless goldfish bowl is what I kind of call it.
Hmm.
And that,
I
just,
like that.
that is what it is. So
Yeah.
how can we interspace that kind of more clinical world that they're living in with more joy and more
Mm,
opportunity to be who they are, which is a dog, that dogginess that we love so much.
mm,
But yet we seem to be
dogging
so
it.
intent on removing. It's a really, really weird cognitive dissonance thing. It's like we want a dog, but we don't want them to be too dog-like. It's we want a dog, but we don't want a dog that barks. We don't want a dog that digs. And we don't want a dog that smells like a blade
It's
of
like
grass.
you are on your cake and
Yeah,
eating it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
um, yeah. Unfortunately, that word control is quite a negative type word, isn't
Yeah,
it? I'm not a fan of
yeah,
control.
yeah,
What does support look like, Maya, when it's rooted in partnership?
yeah. So on the partnership planet, there's four different sections. And there's benevolent guidance, understand impact of negative experiences, canine responsive practice, and appreciate individuality. And I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, because we'll be here for a while. And obviously they're free access, and then
No,
people
that's
have to
okay.
access them. But it's a free access resource. But those four things are really at the core of what good support would look like. So, accepting the dog firstly as an emotional being is kind of the central core value that to be on Partnership Planet you have to have. So that's a kind of a key one.
Mm,
Communication, so that's not just how we communicate with them, but understanding how they communicate with us. So having some sort of understanding of
mm.
canine body language and behaviour, for example.
Yeah, big on
And then a
that.
lot of it is rooted in what we've talked about already, so acceptance of where the dog is at and the limitations. So yes, we could get, say for example, with Podrick, if I really wanted him to become a pub dog, I could get him there with drilling training, counter conditioning, behaviour, blah, blah, blah. And we've done a bit of that, because I want him to feel safe. And so we have done some sort of training and behaviour modification. However, I still know that he would struggle in that environment. He would tolerate it because I'm asking him to, but he wouldn't like it. So it's also about accepting
Mm,
sometimes, even when you have the help, actually, we can get them to hear and let's just leave it there rather than we could technically get them to hear, but who does that serve kind of thing. So also about protecting,
yeah,
so protection around against and negative experiences as much as possible. So that's that prevention element. And then has realistic expectations is on there, which we've already talked about. Provides relief and empathy. So empathy is just such a core, again, another core value of the Partnership Planet. And then appreciate individuality, all of that leg stuff that we talked about earlier in terms of um, loving the dog in front of us. Just as we as humans want to be loved for exactly who we are. Again, it's that cognitive dissonance. We all
mm,
seek this connection and validation from others, and yet we don't seem to allow or push that onto our animal family members. It's strange. So it's about loving and that holistic dog. You don't just like some parts. You have to accept and love them wholly.
yeah. Brilliant. Wow, this episode has been jam packed, and we're just going to start wrapping up now before we just go on to our final section, before we just do our final thoughts and that. But yeah, I literally loved it so much. But rethinking success as a dog guardian, often people feel pressure for their dog to be perfect in inverted commas. But how do you help people redefine what success even means, Maya?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've just answered that one. I think in terms of that expectations and that is
Yeah,
essentially what it is, isn't it? It goes back to that critical reflection of
yeah.
what does perfect mean? Why? What as a society, again, I think and I think that's like to do with technology and the AI and everything, but we're losing our critical analytical skills, we're losing our reflection skills, and instead we're just kind of blindly following things now instead of thinking, does this actually fit my moral compass? Does this actually fit my internal
Mm,
values? And examining what does perfect mean
yeah.
and perfect for who? And
Mm.
I can't remember who put this video up. It was one of the on Facebook somewhere, but they a video of like a dog, running through water and digging holes and everything like that. And to someone else on Compliance Planet, that looks like a badly behaved, untrained dog. But to us, that's what perfect
Yeah.
is. To me, perfect to me is my dog feeling like he can express himself exactly how he wants, when he wants, and that he knows that he can come to
I love
me
that.
for help, that I'm there to help and guide and support him, not tell him what to do. So that to me is what perfect is.
Yeah. I often talk in this podcast about being our dog
Yeah.
superhero. We've got to be their advocate. We've got to be their superhero. Or their voice to a degree, really. We've got to just protect them and sort of speak up for them and stuff.
Yeah.
So perfect. Oh, there we goes that bloody word again. Right, lovely. So, just our final section, Maya, is how listeners can start today, or how our viewers, if you're on YouTube, can start today. So, for someone who's just discovered this model, where would you suggest they start?
Oh, that's such a good question. I envisioned when I wrote the Partnership Planet almost like a workbook to go alongside it. So like
Oh,
answering questions, almost like
okay.
a reflective journal type thing. So people
Yes.
could put it into action in a, so maybe I will, you know, maybe this will motivate me to go back to it and expand on what it can offer, because I do think that, you know, good starting point is to kind of read it, access it, listen to this. I did a talk with Janet and Michelle from Heart Dog as well at
Oh,
their
love.
conference. I think
Yeah,
back in
love them.
2022 now. So but it,
Wow. Was it that long
I think so,
ago?
yeah. But
Yeah,
that's still
remember.
out there somewhere, and also people can pop me a message if they have any questions. But I think, you know, Yappily is a great place to start for that complementary element, to finding someone that can help with, if you are struggling with, you know, your dog, finding someone that can help you with that kind of behavioral element, and using the planets as a resource alongside that would be, you know, a really great place to start. And just question. I would just say
Yeah, I love that.
curious. Curiosity is again a skill. We'll just read everything, even the stuff that you don't agree with. Read it, and then you'll know how to spot that. Because at the minute, what we're seeing is that which we do not want to do being veiled as something that we want to do, very
Mm,
packaged very effectively, and marketed very
mm,
effectively with the right language. But when you look at it, it's a compliance plan. So there's no, we can't only live in our fishbowl in the partnership plan. We actually have to look at everything, filter everything, and then
yeah.
ultimately all we can do, and I say this in my training with in the abuse field, is all we can do is our best with the information we have available to us at the time, and the limitations of our
Mm,
roles and within our kind of boundaries in our lives. And we can always seek for improvement, but trying our best is underappreciated, you know. Yeah.
mm. Brilliant. A nice little plug for our partner there, Yappily. So find a nice, ethical,
Yeah.
compassionate dog trainer or behaviourist via Yappily, the online search directory for ethical professionals, using the Planet partnership models with it as well. Brilliant. So, Maya, how can our listeners learn more about the Partnership Planet or connect with your work, please?
Yeah, so it's a free access resource. You can find it on the website. We'll pop that in the description, shall we? Yeah.
Show
Show
notes.
notes. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's freely available on the website. You can also follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. So we'll also put all of that in the description or resources part. And yeah, I'm very happy for anyone to pop me an email if they're interested in kind of having a chat or learning more about the planet.
Yeah. Did you want to tell us what your email
Oh yeah,
was?
I could do. It's just it's quite long, so I thought people might. So it's in the minute it's my name, so it's Maya Badham at loop-safeguarding.org.
Yeah, no worries. We'll get it all. It will be in the show notes, and we
Will
upload it
do.
all anyway for the on the website and the episode on the various platforms. Maya Badham, thank you so much for joining me on the Yappy Hour today, powered by Yappily. I've absolutely loved this conversation. It's been brilliant. It's sailed by, and it's just been so lovely chatting to you and getting to know more about yourself and the Planet partnership model. So thank you for your time today. I've absolutely loved
Thank you
it.
so much for inviting me. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we heard today. Here are a few key takeaways. Number one, the Partnership Planet model challenges us to think differently about how we live with dogs, not as owners or trainers, but as equals navigating life together. Number two, Maya reminded us that real connection starts with listening to our dogs and to our own nervous systems and to the space between us. Number three, behaviour isn't something to be fixed, it's communication, and through the lens of partnership, we can respond with empathy instead of control. Number four, and perhaps most importantly, we don't need to have all the answers. We just need to show up in the relationship, open and willing to grow for their sake and others. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a fellow dog parent or professional, please subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Yappy Hour again, and please consider leaving us a review. It helps with those all important algorithms. All of the links to Maya's organisation and contact details will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for Maya Badham for joining us today. What a truly inspiring and insightful conversation. I've absolutely loved it. This has been the Yappy Hour with Yappy Dogs, powered by Yappily. I'll see you next time.